Okay, I want to welcome everyone to day 2 of the FAC Budget Review. We've got a busy calendar this morning. I'd like to cover docks. That question was brought up yesterday. Cover docks quickly and then move to recreation and then finish up with food service. Hey, Beth.
What are you trying to do?
Share my screen.
You are shared already.
Okay.
Just hit start.
All right, thanks. Okay, I've got some 2022 highlights, and Clayton and Chad from Public Works will answer questions as well. A lot of these are more financial in nature, so I'll cover them quickly. Right now in the model, we've got dock rates increasing 3% to reflect higher maintenance cost and inflation. That 3% equates to roughly $16,156 incremental revenue year over year. Personal watercraft and kayak rates are held flat for a second year in a row, so at 2021 rates. We do continue to have 10 additional personal watercrafts assumed coming on in April for 71 watercraft lifts in total. We've got some capital spend for Kahidi dock expansion of the KC dock, which would be an incremental 14 slips. Chad's been obviously working with all of our dock expansion this year. If we were to finalize the budget and order docks, it would probably be a September, October delivery for docks. If we ordered them today, they wouldn't come here until June. So we do have quite a bit of a lag. So the assumption is that they would come on in fall with revenue really kicking in for those incremental slips in 2023. Our total docks are 676 docks. So we've got 644 currently. With the docks that are going in Tanasi Basin, Holly and Katie should be able to get those leased pretty quickly. That's another 32 slips. That'll be full year revenue for next year. No proposed change in the number of unsecured lot spots at 187 and secured at 91. The proposal is to hold RV storage rates flat year over year. I know the question comes up quite a bit with the FAC. Our gas dock, you'll see gas dock revenue. I increased it from the 48-cent differential that we have from what we purchase gas from Sweetwater Valley Oil to what we charge at the dock. I increased that 55 cents or to 55 cents from the current 48. So right now our current gas price is roughly $3.42 a gallon. So it'll take us up to $3.97. Higher maintenance of docks. Clayton will talk about this as well. We're replacing some steel cable now that has rusted with stainless steel. Those cables are pretty expensive. We do have budgeted another $16,000 for a diver at roughly $750 a dive for 21 docks to do an annual inspection of all the anchorage and the docks. We've got some incremental expense relating to board replacements and just keeping the docks in good working order in general, which, you know, the diving inspection alone justifies the incremental revenue on the docks. And then lastly, when we went through TIS, this last insurance bid, Selective Insurance did not have a policy for docks, so that was underwritten separately. I know that Marine Advisory Committee and folks that follow the dock financials every month, you'll see in the current year, 2022, there's higher insurance. I budgeted for that for next year. So year over year, you'll see a variance and an increase in the insurance. Yes, sir. Yes, and Bruce, may I ask, anyone that has questions for folks that are online,
Yeah.
if you go to the podium.
Just leave her out there, that's fine.
You have to turn it on though, Bruce.
It's on.
Okay.
It's on.
I'll try to get down here. I think you just made a misstatement, but I want to make sure. On the gas price, you said it was going from 48 to 55, but then you told us that the price at the pump was going from 342 to 397. I think it's just the 49, right? 349?
No. Right now, we pay $3.42 a gallon on the cost side,
Yeah?
and the revenue side would be $3.97.
So you're going up. That's not right. Can't be right.
A 55-cent differential. Right now, we've got a 48-cent differential.
Yeah, but how can it go from, if we got a 48 differential and it's going to 55 differential, how is it going up the whole 55 at the pump? It can't be.
First number he gave you was the cost, not what people are paying at the pump.
So I think you guys need to relook that.
It's
Something's wrong there.
it's charging an extra 7 cents a gallon at the pump.
But you said it was going to 397.
Correct.
Use your mic.
So that 55 cent, is that effective immediately, or is that going to be effective next year?
That's not,
It's-
that's a
it's-
differential. The differential is only 7 cents.
Bruce, the cost to us.
The cost is 342, that's what he said. You add 48 cents to that, you're at 390 plus 7 is 397.
Yeah, right now at the pump, we're at 390.
Well, he said 340,
That's just our cost.
but that's not at the pump.
No, correct.
Yeah, I can understand if it's 390 at the pump, but you said 340.
Okay.
Well, I just want to make sure, because that's a big ass hike. Excuse my French, too. If you went up 55 cents at the pump.
So Bruce, you know that we did not go up 55 cents at the pump. We went up 7 cents. That's just the differential over our cost.
All right. So when I look at docks, and the dock division in our financials includes common docks, gas docks, and the RV storage. This is the comparison that was requested yesterday. You'll see the increase. The column to the left is the 2022 budget draft for the full year. The middle is 2021 budget, and then to the right is 2020 actuals. So you'll see $952,000 in dock revenue, $186,000 in maintenance expense, some operating supplies. We pick up $54,000 in RV revenue. The $106,000 is where you see the increase year over year substantially of the insurance. Utilities are relatively flat as the depreciation goes down slightly. And then there's about $300,000 in other, for a total of $324,000 net income for gas docks.
And you're not allocating salaries, is that next year?
I am not, no, sir.
Kevin, I mean, costs are going up significant. Maintenance up 63%, other up significantly. Why only 3% on the revenue side?
Well, one, I think it's relative to our market. We have more courtesy docks versus full-service docks. We don't have showers, restrooms. Some of our facilities compared to the local market, I think it justifies kind of a lower price point than some of the other marinas.
There's a certain amount of supply and demand comes into the equation too. There's, 100 and something on the waiting list?
Yes, and I don't know, Chad, do you know if Marine Advisory had that conversation of rates?
Are you ready?
I'm ready, Pat.
It's gonna take me some handouts here because I can answer most.
Here, just go ahead. Gallery. Oh, here, watch out. Sorry, Stephen, I didn't mean to smack you on that. Sometimes you, if you drink.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Okay. Thank you. For those that have not attended board meetings or been a part of this, this is nothing more than an analysis that was done a number of years ago by Mike Colacone to show that we were grossly underpriced compared to other docks. And as you go through here, you will find the explanation that the board and the POA has been accepting on these grossly underpriced slips and docks. And what Kevin just talked about was the fact that there's a lot of maintenance costs that go into a full-service marina that was not factored into the study that Mike Colacone did. So in effect, we've been comparing apples to oranges instead of apples to apples because we're not a full-service dock. We have convenience neighborhood storage areas. And also in here, there are a couple of other issues that you need to be aware of. The ones that are leasing from the docks are single slip, and we have double slip. So in other words, as example, when my boat came untied this summer, or the rope broke, it started banging the one next door, and that doesn't happen in a full-service marina. So here is the new comparison of our slips and docks that takes the place of the one Mike Colacone did. And this was done by the Marine Advisory Committee. It took them almost a year to get it done. So we got that out of the way. Second thing is that, let me go back and get myself in order here. That goes there. No. And if you want to, for some of the folks that are here, I got DNA on the upper left hand corner, so we can pass it. That's fine. Okay. So, let me start off by saying, yeah, they do. Yeah, just whoever would like it back here. So let me explain, let me start off with this. The TVA POA model that we have based on pricing and the way our model is set up for assessments is based on the property owner assessment and the user fees. So the model is set up to have less allocation of the assessment fee, which some of us call subsidy, to the amenities as the number of users increase. So we see this model working today in golf, recreation, and food services, primarily the yacht club, as users increase, the burden of funding from assessment fee decreases. The ultimate example of the model working is the TVA POA docks. These slip lease fees have generated over $500,000 in funds when expenses have averaged around $300. This is going back to 2019, which has added approximately $200,000 a year in funds to the Tellico Village Property Owners Association. Now, this is what I want you to understand. This is a very powerful message to send in this budget process in 2022. The message is that user fees increase to support a particular amenity. The property owner value supported by these user fees remains high, and the property owner cost of supporting these amenities remains low. Not free, and not continuing to strategically maintain the amenity, but a low cost to maintain. As we all moved in here, we saw a tremendous owner value from the place we moved from. Golf courses, recreation, hiking trails, et cetera, and when we first came here, we had an extremely low member cost. Taxes were lower. Price to get your car registered was lower. Price to play golf was lower. Everything was lower, and we're thrilled to death, and as time goes on, the value comes down because our friends and neighbors start aging out of amenities. We don't participate as much anymore, and cost of everything, including a loaf of bread, goes up. So what we have here is an opportunity to say to the Tellico Village property owners that we're cognizant of the fact that amenity fees support us, or the assessment fees support the amenities, but there comes a time when the number of users, number of property owners go up to the point that the user fees start digging into that percentage of assessment that we're all supporting. And docks have been doing that for years. So take out this piece of paper here. On that piece of paper, on the left-hand side, dock slip fees 2021. So covering all of the different type slips that we offer, including personal watercraft and kayak, we're generating $577,371 in revenue a year. We're going to add 32 this year, which would generate 846 because they're 11 by 24. So our 2022 collected revenue per this year is still the 577,371. Now let's go to the right-hand side. We take a 3% increase, leaving personal watercraft and kayak alone, we're generating $593,238, which generates to the TVPOA $15,867, a mere pittance of what we're collecting. Now, if you look at what was just presented up here, we're still going to be generating over $200,000 in revenue from the slip leasees to the TVA POA fees or funds. So, if we take that number and we add in the 32 slips that we're putting into NASA, you're going to generate an additional $27,884, which brings the, on the right-hand side again, the 2022 total up to $43,751.16. Again, a very small amount, but significant, or not even significantly, just more than the $15,867. Now, the proposal here goes back a number of years because we had a request to put in a kayak storage fee or slips. And when we put those slips in, the agreement with those folks was that once we built that, we would go back and look at what that fee structure was and, if possible, reduce it. Now, in the back of your book here, there's a piece of paper. I think it was on here. Yeah, I think that's the one. Yep. Looks like this. It's in the very back of the book I gave you. If you go up to the top right-hand side, the little block that says B, and it says member value. If you take a boat with the average cost being $55,000 and we have 644 slips, we generate, or that value is almost or a little over $500,000. And the total cost for the average watercraft for all of the boats that we have here would be over $35 million. And if we take our slip fees and divide it into that cost, we have a years to zero that cost out at 67 years. If you go down to personal watercraft, that is 44 years. But if you go to kayaks, we're in effect totaling our property owner kayak purchase price in 2 years. We're taking the lease fee of $344 on a $700 average kayak, and they're paying for a new kayak every 2 years. That is not acceptable. So I'm proposing, going back again to this page, I'm proposing that we not only not reduce dock slip fees because we're generating excess funds anyway, we're also overcharging the kayaks, and I'm proposing that we go to the industry standard of $200 instead of the $344. That'll then take us down on the final total to $30,951.16 difference, which is, compared to the numbers that we're looking at, not significant at all. But it's sending a more powerful message to our property owners that during this budget process, we will be able to go back and maintain our TV POA model, that when user fees rise to the point, we can then cut into assessment fees. And we see it being done in golf now. I think they've reduced $1 million by increasing theirs. We've seen it by the yacht club funding money back to the POA. And I think there's a very powerful message that's worth much more than $15,867 to send to the boat owners that we value your member value, and we value your owner cost, keeping it low. Now I'm ready for any questions that you may have. Come on.
My only comment on the kayak piece, Pat, is I understand, to me, the boat value's somewhat irrelevant, because I could put a
I agree.
$100 skiff in the same slip that you've got a, Carver yacht, and it doesn't make a difference. We are making a future investment in kayak storage. If you look, the next slide I'll get to is the capital plan. And in 2023, there are plans to put almost a pavilion-like kayak storage. We've been talking about kind of what that would look like. So we understand that, kayaking is, becoming more popular these days with a younger crowd. But just like anything with reserves, we do need to kind of plan for that future capital investment, so.
I agree. And the point I'm making is that there are funds available that we're not tapping and have not tapped since, well, this is just recent history, 2019, that we've been generating this $200,000 to $300,000 excess funds to TVPOA. And I know we did build a dock, but if you go 19, 20, 21, 2, 4, 6, you got $600,000 of excess has been generated by property owners to the maintaining the docks. And again, Chad's over here, and what a great job he's doing with the Marine Advisory Committee. We have replaced stainless steel anchors on a number of docks, primarily E and N. We have other plans to put some more in, but as this is showing, it looks like to me that we're not spreading it out, which we don't need to replace them all this year, correct? but we do need the inspection from the dive, so the two kind of counterbalance each other, and then throw the gas in on top of that, which benefits all of us. Because you have people outside Tellico Village going up and down this lake, pulling in here to say, your gas is cheaper. Well, as a boater, I want my gas cheaper, but at the same time, I want to be able, as a POA board member and a assessment fee-paying member, to not be taken advantage of because somebody comes to us where we could be generating more funds from there community-wide. So we have revenue coming in from a couple of different places that aren't accounted for here. We have some spreading out of the maintenance issues that we can go back and look at. And doing that, send that very powerful message to the property owners that if you don't want an assessment fee, then don't go to Wind River and play golf. Don't go to an outside restaurant and eat. Us first, you first, be selfish, spend your hard-earned dollar in Tellico Village to get those user fees up to make your assessment fees stabilize or go down. So the proposal I'm making is reduce kayaks to $200 and no increase to any other slips. And you still generate over $200,000 in revenue.
Yeah, Pat, the issue I have with that is we're going to take a big step backwards. We're already taking a step backwards by roughly 10% if you do apples to apples and factor in the salaries. Look at the maintenance costs going up dramatically. You got whatever's in other going up dramatically.
Well, the maintenance cost I covered because you're putting in the stainless steel cables and all that into next year, and it can be spread out. They're not all failing.
But that's not every dock, is it, Kevin, next year?
No.
And
Which docks? How many?
That's why we have a diver coming in. We got to do our preventative maintenance. For years past, there's not been consistent diving, and we're going to start diving these docks every year and doing inspections. We don't know what kind of shape the cables are in those, but we got to look and find out because we may have a whole lot more that needs replaced right now than we realize.
True.
so I agree with the kayaks. I think for the size and the cost of a kayak, yeah, that fee is probably high. But with 120, 30, 40 people on the waiting list, I think we've got opportunity on the dock. Even your comparison in here shows that dock fees at other places that have similar facilities are much higher.
Now, go back and say that again. So if you want to make that comparison, then my argument would be we should be charging $2,000 a slip as they do at Harbor Town or at Sequoia.
No, I'm not saying go that high, but
Then how high?
the profit that's generated goes to building new docks.
And if you go back and look at this budget process, for those that were here then, 2019, the dock was approved, 2020, a dock was approved, 2021, and there was a 3%, a 3%, and a 3%. That money has been coming in to build those docks, and they haven't been built. The money is there. It's been paid for the last 3 years. Now we're going to do it again for the same reason without the docks going in. So if you want to send a message, you tell the people that you have paid for the last 3 years, we're going to put it in, and at least in 2022, maintain this standard, send the message that when you drive up user fees, we can maintain price increases or assessment fees. That was our model, but we're not sending that message to the people. We're saying right now, you pay for it, you generate more money into the fund, you save up the money in the fund, and we're going to come back and raise your rates again.
Okay. I don't think we're gonna,
Oh, yeah,
Get-
I know.
get an answer
This
to
is
that
first
today.
pass, I know, and I would hope every one of you look up my phone number, my email address, and send me some type of nasty comment or rude remark.
You can count on mine this afternoon.
Thank you. It wouldn't be a typical day without yours, my friend.
Kevin, question.
yes, Norris?
The other chart, one you just came from,
Yes, sir.
22 budget, there's no salaries compared to.
No, Norris, I could repeat your question. Norris pointed out, if you look at the middle column in the 2021 budget and the column to the right for 2020 actuals, there's allocated salaries of $114,000 even. And that was an old allocation of, it was just an internal entry for, I think I went back to 2007 is when that number got created. So to simplify the accounting, I wasn't doing any labor allocation throughout the whole budget. So that there's no staff tied to docks. It's really supported by Public Works. Does that make?
Taxes jump up and insurance.
It's the insurance side, and like I said before,
That high.
yes, it used to be an allocation as well, Steve. And then I have the specific insurance policy just for docks because it was underwritten separately. And then finally on capital, we talked about some of these. $100,000 for the KC dock at Kahiti. Future plans down the road for Tenasseee Basin. As we have in the past, $25,000 for 10 additional personal watercraft slips. Pave Kahiti dock entrance road and parking lot, $150,000. We've got 10 replacement jet ski slips. And one thing I want to add about those replacements, Marine Advisory Committee, in particular Bruce Dillingham, has done a wonderful job for the village of selling old personal watercrafts.
Yeah, and
To minimize that.
That's one of the key items that I forgot to mention. We, in 2020, Bruce took it upon himself to try to recover the cost or try to get money from those floating slips. We had been throwing them in the trash. So he took it upon himself to get on Craigslist and sell those, and he sold 10 for $4,800. They went in minutes. So last year, or this year, when we replaced the 10, he did it again and he doubled the fee. So he's collected almost $8,000 from there. So now the plan is we've got 10 more going in next year. Since we're getting rid of them so fast, the idea is to get more money for them. And you remember the $15,000? You're going to get $8,000 at least from selling the slip. So again, the message to the community is, I'm going to go up on your rates.
Thank you, Pat.
Question on, it's one of these, to pave the docks at Kahiti. Does that, are you improving the, I'll call it walkway to, you're gonna add slips at Sea Dock and getting back there as a gravel through the trees, you know how it is. So you're gonna change that, improve that a little bit?
Yes, that would include paving back there too also.
And then finally, on the gas dock, there's replaced piping on the fuel dock, which happens periodically, as well as replacement of the fuel dispenser. So nothing new for this coming year on the gas dock. Last year, we upgraded the fuel management system. That's working very well. We've got less problems at the pump, although, as it was pointed out earlier, because of our good price on the lake, we do have a lot of activity at that gas pump. both villagers and non-villagers. So, any other questions on docks? Yes, Steve?
Last year's budget, the Tanasi Basin, I thought we were doing 32 this year and 32 next year. It looks like you split it out another year. Or
No,
is-
sir.
Am I wrong?
I don't like calling people wrong, but if I clarify, right now we've got on Holly's sheet, Chad, 644, and then 32, she'll start renting in probably the next few weeks, when the current 32 go in.
Okay, if we look at the capital plan last year, the 10-year plan,
Yep.
what did it show for these next 32 slots in 2022 or 2023 as it now shows? No. Last year, I thought we had, Tanasi was gonna get 2 new docks.
Yeah, there's still some debate on the 2 new docks
I'm just going back to what we published in our budget.
because of parking. Look at it as
I'll double check that, Steve, but I'm pretty sure it was in
Okay.
23.
I thought we had both of them, 21, 22 at Tanasi.
Okay, I'll double check that.
Very quickly, you show no activity from now to doomsday in the RV storage. Are we finished with that? I know, but we did a lot of work this year, and we're saying that's gonna carry us for the next 10 years, 6 years.
Well, we've run out of room at this time.
Okay,
So we
but
are,
no improvements.
we are evaluating to see what we can do.
You would
but
think
as of now-
somewhere along there, you would have some maintenance costs, just
Yeah.
curious. So you're saying status quo for the next however many years out there, 6 years?
Right now, Bruce, but like Clayton said, I think if we focus on getting that back area by the unsecured storage, that looks to me like it's just a brush dumping ground cleaned up, that would be the other 2 acres that we can create unsecured storage in and expand a little bit. But we need to clean house and get that looking a lot better than it is right now.
I do understand that, but you would think that if you're gonna clear that out, potentially you'd show some cost out there to do that.
Yeah,
Is it all zeros?
yeah, I could add.
So my question is, these people that are all wanting more RV space, we're basically saying we are maxed out, but except for this area you're cleaning.
Right now, but, Mitzi and I have talked about this, and my guess is, Ed Grohlman's not here with the long-range planning. I think long-term storage, be it like the building storage or equipment storage, is going to be a long-term need of the community of where do you put stuff. But I haven't seen, I know he's updating the surveys and stuff, so my guess is you'll see something about storage there. All right, thank you, guys. Sure. Yes, sir.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for the opportunity to present on our budget for the Recreation Department. I want to start by saying we've had a challenging couple of years with the pandemic hitting though what we put together is something we're working on for months. What I start out with is our strategic plan theme, and strategic plan is something that we did in 2019. It was a 5-year plan. We first put this together, people were like, oh, this means we're getting all kinds of new stuff. We're going to get building all kinds of new things. Actually, what it went into is what we need to do in order to better our department, be the best department we can be. And one of the themes of that was, instead of getting new facilities and new amenities, is grow in place with existing facilities. And the reason I bring it up is because throughout my presentation, I'll be identifying a few of those things. Now, my first slide here, and if you would, bear with me as I go through this because, well, the next slide, there we go. I just went ahead and put it out there. This is the highlights of things that are different this year. And throughout my presentation, I'll address each one of these. So if you wouldn't mind holding the questions till we get there, I'll probably address 99% of your questions through this. Okay, so going through this, these are increases or things that are different this year. So at the Wellness Center, we have a rehab leg press. Green means it's coming from capital. And that is a matrix. It's one of the best pieces of equipment you can get for legs. And we also go through TOC and what do y'all think is the best thing? And why do we spend that much money for a piece of equipment? Well, it's one of the most important pieces of equipment to help people to continue with mobility and balance. So we feel like that's a very important thing to put in here. The next is the design for the porch conversion we talked about doing last year. We put everything on hold last year with our projects based on the pandemic, and let's see how things are going to pan out. It doesn't make any sense. Want to be fiscally responsible and not spend money until it's needed. So design the back porch, and I'll address this a little bit further into the presentation, what that talks about, but that's a way to expand without buying new facilities. We talked about different ways of getting bids, and I think it's best that we get a professional to come in and tell us how best to design this. The next is a pickleball courts. This comes out of maintenance. It's time to repave 2 of them. 7 and 8 are needing it. So in the past, we paint, we put more acrylic on it, put new lines. This is putting several inches of new asphalt on it. And this will last us a good 15 years from that. I'm also planning to do that for the next 4 years until we get all 8 of them. The next 2, the repainting the carpet, that used to be in Public Works. That's moving over into the Recreation Department budget. That's to repaint the interior and to do the carpet. It's time to upgrade. Next is in Chota, and that is, again, the green is the capital. Storage, we have a storage unit that we have outside that needs to be upgraded, and that's to change that out. The next one is a racquetball conversion, and we've talked about that for several years of how do we utilize space that we're not utilizing to the best potential. Again, I'll address that a little bit more detail as we go in, but right now we have 2 people using 2 courts, 600 square foot each of a hardwood floor and a great big room. That's not a good use of space. Next is Chota is to update the exterior and to redo the carpet. There's some things we can do. We took a lot of time the past, I guess it'll be my 5th year, my 4th budget year, but I spent a lot of my time getting the Wellness Center back together, and when Clayton's crew come in this last go around, we got things straight there. It's looking the way it needs to look. So now I want to put some focus on Chota. We have a really good facility over there, but in my mind, it's not the best. I want the best. I want us to be the best in the industry. I think we could do a lot better. If you walk into the Wellness Center or any of our nice facilities, it has a theme when you come in. And when you come into Chota, I don't get it. It seems to me like I don't know, a nursing home or something from the 80s. But there's things that we can do cosmetically to dress it up so it doesn't have to look like that. It's a very functional building. We don't have to spend a lot of money, but we can do some things to make it look a whole lot nicer. And that's a part of the first impressions. I think it's very important. So that's updating the exterior there. The frame when you first come in, that needs to be updated. Some of the brick on the back where the pool is, it needs to be simply repainting. We take care of that and recarpet the building. At Kahidi, we're putting in there for a leg press. That's not the same type of leg press. I'm talking about the Wellness Center. We have one already at the Wellness Center, but that's one area that they're missing up at the Kahidi. We've done a lot to upgrade that facility up there, and that's one item that's missing. We want to put in there. And the beach, these are just some things that I put in there because our outdoor recreation at the beach at Tuglu has really gone really well. After we started the whole situation with Tuglu at the beginning of the year, we moved the staff down to the beach. We opened up 7 days a week to have kayaks and paddle boards and rave reviews. And we've been packed with people coming. They bring in their friends, bring in their families and their grandkids to go out. So we need to upgrade some life jackets. I also want to get some inflatable, SUP is a stand-up paddleboard. Those are lightweight. Part of what we do with these classes is indoctrinate people to what's kayaking about. We teach them how to do that. What's paddleboarding about? What are the different types of equipment you can buy? A lot of people come and they have all kinds of ideas of all the things they want to get into, but they don't really know what they want before they buy an expensive bunch of equipment. They can try ours out. And the other is youth kayaks. This is for kids to be able to get in and paddle around. And then floats is just like you see going down little rivers, just sitting afloat and floating around. So the big one over there is a 4% rate increase. And again, I'll address all this throughout. I just want to give you the highlight of what I'm going through. All right, next. This is getting right into the membership. If you'll see back in 220, March or April, all of a sudden it goes woof, starts going down. Industry-wide, they're looking at 75–80% decline because of the pandemic and health clubs. Well, we're a lot more than just a health club, but we still took a hit. And that's why we put in our last year's budget about a 30% decrease in memberships. Because how do you base it? We don't know what's coming with the pandemic. So after lots of tribulation with our Recreation Advisory Committee, who, by the way, are not very shy in telling me exactly what they think and feel, which I appreciate, and our board liaison also. And my projections for next year, coming back with, it'll be 27% projected higher than last year, but that's taken us back to our numbers of actuals, what we've had, and what we're projecting for the rest of the year. So you'll look, the numbers will be the same as what we're actually, our budget, our actuals for 2021 is what I'm putting in for our budget. Industry-wide, there's still some concern out there. I got numbers between 17–24% decline. It's hard to tell because May, things are starting to go right back up again with memberships and people coming back. We had the Delta variant come in and whoop, people taking it back and decide not to come back in. It's a tough call, but I feel like it is aggressive to go with those numbers, but I feel confident because of what we've been doing here in the village. The numbers are steadily increasing with membership, so I feel like we'll be okay. So that'll impact our revenue. Okay, next.
Hey, Simon, real quick before you, I know you want questions at the end, but at the end, can you address, normally when I look at a trend, if you finish the year, say we finish at 943 household memberships, January you're dropping again and kind of coming back up. So you're continuing the pattern of actuals from 2021.
Yes.
Which I think is conservative and right to do, but I think a lot of people are going to ask, why, you're either assuming you're going to lose some people just from their annual renewals, but if you could explain that later, that would.
Well, I can hit it now. I mean, in normal circumstances, I would think, as I had before, 5 or 6% increase each year because we're going to do the right things and attract more people. This is based on COVID, and I don't know what to anticipate for the next year with the variants coming and people deciding to come in or not. It's still a swag.
Right, but I think part of the answer is you've got folks renewing memberships and falling off of memberships every single month.
Right.
It's not an annual membership starting in January.
Right. Yes. Okay. Next. This is our facility comparisons to what other folks offer. I think it's important to look at the price and the value. There's up at the top. This is what we have for household and individual, and these are all of the things that we offer for that price. And look at the next comparable ones. Got Fort Sanders at more than double. National Fitness doesn't even have everything that we have. Same as Olympia, Bump Memorial. You hear some folk, we're gonna go to Gold's Gym. Oh, yeah, that's fine if that's all you want. You get a little bit of gym, and you get a workout facility, and that's it. There's no pool, there's no tennis courts, there's no multi-facilities. That's your one facility. And same with the YMCA. They got the pool, but they don't have everything that we offer. The other thing I was gonna bring up that my rec committee, and probably Steve may throw something at me, but I'm bringing it up anyways because they don't agree with it. But if you, what's that? Get ready. Is if you take a look at the side, we have no enrollment fee. This is what everybody else does in the industry is have enrollment fee. Some do it yearly, some do it a one-time enrollment fee. Now, I did suggest that, and that wasn't taken really well by the rec committee or my liaison, but that is something to put out there. That is not something that we do. And if you're looking to raise some revenue, if you had an annual, say $20 that you had for enrollment fee, that's 30 grand each year. I'm not suggesting that, I'm just putting that out there. If I suggest it, I will have things thrown at me. Moving forward. So again, we do take a look at what everybody else is doing and what you're getting. So we're getting really good value. So 4% increase, I feel like, is fine. Next. So this is our current memberships. And then the next one is what our increase would be. Still, we're way below everybody else, and we offer a lot more. All right, moving ahead. Wait, is everybody on the same page here? One of the main increases will be maintenance, and that's from taking some of the things from Public Works that go into us now with carpeting and re-upping. And there's about $90,000 in increase in maintenance. But doing painting, taking care of the outside of Chota, that's what all that includes. The operating supplies goes up because of chlorine, our pool chemicals, went about 35–40%.
And Simon, the other thing to add, on the salary line, he's not adding any incremental headcount. That's really driven by bringing up the hourly staff to a $15 minimum.
Okay, next.
Quick question on the financials. So basically, I agree with a lot of what you said about the facilities. My issue is that our costs are going up 15% and our revenue is going up 4%. And the reason you can show that great value in the previous slide is because every lot owner in here pays $150 a year to support that great value. You know, all 6,500 lots pay $150 a year. So, you know, it's great value for those 700 people that join, certainly than the other gyms around. But, you know, I just think that we should be a little more financially responsible with a loss of, you know, $1.1 million and find ways to reduce that loss as opposed to increasing the loss year after year. You know, maybe look at it a la carte offering. You know, if I join, I'm not a member, but I would potentially be a member if I didn't have to pay for Kahiti or the beach or things that I will never use. I'd go to the wellness center, I'd do the classes, but all those other things you listed on there, I don't want to use and I don't want to pay for. But I think you could increase your membership. Say, people in Kahiti are probably not going to the wellness center very often. You charge a smaller amount for just access to Kahiti, and you could probably increase the membership that way. People that only want the beach activities or only want pickleball. A lot of the other communities I looked at before choosing here offered à la carte for their amenities. And we actually like that, because there's certain ones we would use and certain ones we wouldn't, and we didn't feel wanted to pay for all those things that we're not going to use. So, my 2 cents.
Well, if you turn the page on what John is just talking about, there's another side here too. And we've seen the results primarily during golf with COVID. And if you go back to Jim West, where this board and finance and everybody was challenging Jim West, we were telling him, you're sitting back and letting golf deteriorate because of a housing recession, and you're not going out and marketing to the new people. And what we found was that when he started having these taco trucks and these putt-putt things and all this, we had non-golfers come out to play putt-putt. Next thing you know is they're over at a clubhouse buying a $2,000 set of golf clubs and taking the lessons. Primarily the women in Tellico Village, to the point that the PGA was calling Jim West and saying, what the heck are you doing to increase the number of women playing golf here? So my question, you can go up in rates. And again, we go back to mine with the boats and the slips. You have an owner value and you have an owner cost. We are a community, and we beat this dead horse for the last 3 or 4 years I've been on this board. We're a community of 2 driving factors. One is that we're thrifty. We are thrifty. Frugal, however you want to call it. We went out and we amassed our fortune, whether it's a lot or whether it was enough. And we packed our stuff and we moved to Tellico Village because we wanted to live here. So we're thrifty in that. Second, if you don't realize this, we're a community of routine. We do the same thing over and over and over. So my question on the other side of what you bring up, John, is what is the recreation department? And again, I understand it's COVID. You may not want to do it now, but you need a plan to go out and recruit recreation memberships. And we have, and I've discussed it with some of your folks and with Steve and with you, there are a number of classifications of people in Tellico Village, primarily the new people, that we can make offers to that would increase really quick your recreation roll numbers and then allow them to drop into the routine of going back all the time. And I talk about routine because I've heard you, I think the number is what, 30%, 33%, I think I heard you talk about?
Yeah, that's accurate.
So if it's 33%, how can you get to 34? And then how can you get to 35? Because that's going to generate, remember I talked about user cost offsetting the assessment fee? That's what's on the other side of the page, and you really need to work on that.
Thank you.
This is about the time every year for the last 6 years that I've stepped up and remind everybody that the concept around which this village was built was all for one and one for all. And that we basically realize that when people move here, even the very original people, that we weren't going to all use all the amenities that we have. But we have the amenities because that's what brings the people here. And that's what helps us sell our homes, and that's what keeps us a thriving and desirable community. So our concept from the very beginning has not been that all amenities must and services must pay for themselves. They pay for themselves to some extent, but not 100%. And the reason why is that because everybody in this village, whether they use that amenity or not, benefits from that amenity. So we never have, and probably never will, or should never have or expect our amenities to break even. They never will, and they shouldn't, because of the fact that people that don't use them shouldn't have to pay those fees. They pay through their assessments, and those assessments are to pay for everything that benefits them in the long run as far as home value and just the value of living in the village in general. So I don't want you guys to think when we look at these numbers that there should be a zero deficit when you compare expense to revenue. It should not be. And the reason why, if you do, you're cheating the people that use that facility because they're paying for it 100% when everybody else is getting value out of that, correct? So remember, just keep in the back of your mind, one for all and all for one. And if you don't know what that means, 3 years ago, the POA, the New Villagers, and the HOA published a document fully explaining it, and it's out there on the website if you want to go find it.
I understand that. I guess my point is that it's not a endless or bottomless pit that you go out 5 years and now we're losing $2 million a year just because of that concept. There's still some fiscal responsibility that has to take place to minimize that loss, you know, for the...
Minimizing it's one thing, and I agree with you. I've said it for a long time now. We ought to look at all kinds of ways to minimize those costs. And I challenge them to look at a la carte. We haven't looked at that yet, but it's something you ought to look at. So I agree with you. You ought to try to find ways to minimize that cost, but never expect it to go to zero.
Well, and the other side of that too is not just the revenue side, it's the expense side. What are we doing to control expenses? Our expenses are going up every year, and we don't really have a good line of sight into what makes up these numbers. But that's one thing that I would challenge not only this team, but the other teams. What are we doing to try to reduce our expenses? We really need to be focusing on that because we do have a limited amount of revenue coming in.
Hi, I'm Nancy D'Amato on the Recreation Committee, and I want to thank Bruce because we all feel the same way that Bruce does, that every person that adds value to the subsidies is adding value to the whole community. And I'd like to address what John said. We do look at that every year. We have looked at a la carte. What we find to be a disadvantage of that is we don't know how many full members we would lose because we're gaining members that are just using one portion of the facility. In addition to that, it would be a cost, to make it cost effective, we would probably end up charging the person for that one, like say they just play pickleball. They would probably pay as much to play pickleball as they are paying to use the whole facility. We also look at increasing membership and how we can do that every year, and we come up with a lot of ideas. I know I've had this discussion with Pat before where the average nationwide of people that work out daily at a wellness center is about 35%. And even on the committee, some people argue with me for that, but you have to look at this community as what they consider exercise. And even though there are many members of the community who use the wellness center, some of them go walking in their neighborhood, they walk their dog, that's their exercise. They play golf, that's their exercise. They go boating and consider that their exercise. So I just want you to know that we consider all of those things, and as far as expenses, we are very frugal and mindful of the cost of everything that we do at the Recreation Center. Thank you.
Thank you. A couple of other things on here. Paul Libby. If you look at the true controllable costs that Simon has, there's only about $300,000 or $400,000 of his entire budget. You're looking at operating supplies and maintenance. Pretty much everything else is not controllable. He's got a staff, full-time staff of what, 4 people? The rest of it's part-time. There's not a lot of people that he can really adjust to do anything about salaries and personnel. So basically he's looking at maintenance and operating supplies because everything else is pretty much out of his control. To cut cost out of those items, if you cut it by 20%, you're cutting $40,000 or $80,000. That's not a big change on the entire budget. If you look at his subsidy, and really, when I look at subsidy, if you take the net income and take out the depreciation, because that's a non-cash item, his subsidy over the last several years has been fairly flat until COVID hit. It's right around $750,000 a year until COVID hit. There's not a lot that we can do. We are thinking about doing some type of a study in terms of looking at a different rates, smorgasbord as I call it, but you don't know how it's going to really affect membership in total. And I agree with Nancy. In order to maintain what you have today, you're probably going to have to increase rates for each one of those items. If they want to play pickleball, if they want to play tennis, everyone's going to cost as much as they pay today for an entire membership.
Thank you. Kevin, what I'm going to request is this discussion about subsidy. This is one side of the equation. You also got the capital. And we've done this in the past. What I think we need for all amenities is a true cash flow with capital for the year. Forget whether it gets funded from reserves or not. How much capital we've spent the last 5 years for each amenity? What's the cash loss when you back out non-cash items? And let's see what's happened to the cash requirements for all amenities so we can track it. And you can divide it by number of paying lots to figure out this 150 that's been thrown around, which is close. What's golf? And let's track it to see what's happening with that cash subsidy over 5 years. Okay?
Yep.
Thanks.
One last thing, and then maybe you can move on. In the past, or the last couple of years, going to expense, we have put together a trend line. We've been operating this village for 30 years now. We know what it takes to run this business. The things that should affect the costs from year to year to year is inflation and growth. If we come up with this trend line and we show it, and I think he'll be showing it later in this budget process, and at the macro level across the village, you'll see that over the last 10 years at least, that we basically have been on a trend line, and the only increase in cost has basically been primarily attributed to inflation. Now we have to add in their growth. So if we show that line, you guys and us on the board, we ought to be looking at that trend line and saying, wait a second, we're out of line here. What happened? And go back and look at the individual pieces to see what it takes to get it back in line, or at least to explain it. And I think that's what we're doing.
I guess in summary, to answer that question, we look at that all the time in recreation. We don't just look at things lightly. Ever since I've been here, we looked at the revenue side of things. And I've run health clubs in the private industry, which is cutthroat. And I do understand how to raise up the money, and we can absolutely do that. It's not an atmosphere that you all will want, that you all will appreciate, but we can absolutely take the money up. You can also do that with an enrollment fee. Like I said, if you do $20 a year, that's going to take you about 30 grand. Take it up to $100. So if you want the revenue, that's ways to do it. There absolutely are ways to do it. But we do a balance of what we want to do here, how we want to run things.
I think the à la carte, though, that the goal there is to increase the total number of people using the facilities, but whenever you do à la carte, the total adds up to much more than your $600 all-in fee, right? So there's an advantage there. Somebody that's going to use 3 or 4 different amenities within recreation, say, well, it's cheaper for me to do the all-in at $600 as opposed to do 3 individual pieces of that, because maybe those 3 pieces add up to $600, so they might as well do the full membership. But if they're only going to use one and pay $200, you then increase the number of total heads you've got coming in.
And again, we look at that for the past 4 years and respectfully disagree. I don't think that's the way to go. I think the all-inclusive is the way to go, and I think that was a good way to set it up. But I can be swayed. I have a strong recreation advisory committee. So anyway, I want to move on to the next. And part of putting our things together is doing a survey of what folks are looking for, what's important to our members. If you'll see there, one of the most, and again, this goes back to my original grow in place and how do we do things with existing facilities. So the most important one is exercise room. You also notice on there the walking trails is really highly valued. Next is the pools. And the next is the group fitness classes, and this is a big trend throughout, and we're focusing on that. As far as the exercise room, there's some things that we can do that I'll address here in a minute. The trails, we've got 20 miles of trails now. We just maintain what we've got. I don't feel like we need to go more. So moving on to the next one.
May I interject? I got a question for you, and I'm very intrigued with this a la carte. And I won't go into the grisly background of being on the golf advisory committee years ago and some of the discoveries we made there with golfers. But as an example, if I'm a member of the recreation a la carte group and I am signed up to use the exercise room, what's to stop me from going into the swimming pool?
That's a big issue. What's going to stop you from doing pickleball and doing something else?
Exactly. So at that point, my question would be, you've got to identify me and the level that I'm paying, correct? So if I'm paying for exercise room, how are you going to keep me out of pickleball? Well, the only way to do it is I got to have a card, and you've got to have a card reader, and you've got to have a server and a computer that is going to identify and lock or unlock that door, correct?
Yes, sir. I have to have increased staff, well, a lot of places do, to identify those folks.
Okay. Oh, sure you could, yeah. Or you could hire more people to check off a checklist to come and go. But the most expensive solution is hiring people.
Yeah. All right, so next slide. Which of the following services would you most be interested to see provided? These are things that we hear from the Recreation Advisory Committee. We hear out in the community people are looking for. We also tag into the survey to get some input. The biggest one is new group fitness offerings, a mind-body yoga studio. Second, and spin bikes, classes, that I put in the same as new group fitness offerings. So these are the things that folks are looking for. So next slide. These are the other, because there was a question for other. These are other things that people are interested in. Additional covered pickleball courts, fitness class suggestions, another big one. Shuffleboards back up there and bike trails. Okay, moving forward. What I'm focused on right now is our group fitness. This is what our group fitness calendar looks like. We don't have any space for any more classes, which is a really good thing. We talked a little bit before, I guess, last year about social fabric, and one of the really impressive things that we have, I feel like, with the recreation department is our group fitness classes. These are all folks that live here in the village that are also our paid instructors. We really push certification. So when you go to a class, whether you have 15 people or you have 50 people, you have a certified instructor that's helping you throughout the whole thing. But it's also something that maybe people don't talk about much. It's the social aspect of it. This is my group of people. This is what we come to. This is how we exercise and have fun. So with the pandemic, we moved to 45-minute classes, and we found that that works out really well now. We can offer a whole lot more classes. In doing so, we're packed. And that's a good thing, but that causes some challenges. So this is our group fitness at the Wellness Center, all the different offerings we have. And then Chota. We said, you know what, we have a gymnasium at Chota. We can start using that also. And so we've about maxed that out also.
Question for you. Do we still have classes that people pay above and beyond what the rec fee is?
Yes, line dancing would be one of them, and then personal training would be one of them. But line dancing is above and beyond.
So essentially, that's an a la carte type thing?
I guess that one is, yes.
Yeah, so we do have a la carte, we just don't go very far with it. So my question is, why are we charging extra fee for those? Just think about it. You don't have to give me an answer now, but why is, if we're all for one and one for all, why are they being charged more than the everyday person?
I would agree with that question.
My answer to that, though, is line dancing is a club. It's basically set up at the Wellness Center.
So what's pickleball?
Hey, Bruce, first of all,
Dancing and they're not a member, they're also paying a guest fee in common law.
Well, they're still paying.
first of all, Bruce, I agree. And that was something that was established before I came here.
Something you need to change.
And it was also established where, trying to figure out rates and who's doing what. That's the only thing that's not been changed. So,
For all, one problem. Don't be fair, you need to be fair.
Simon, you have to be a rec membership to be in the line dance class.
no, you can pay a guest fee. You pay a guest fee. Or you be a rec member and pay additional. You're right, and if we can reduce the revenue, figure out a way to pay. I don't think we'll have an instructor that will teach the class though, for the 20 or 25 bucks that we tell them when they're making $75 to $100 a class.
You're adding about $150 a year to those people that the other people.
Can you use the microphone? Can't hear. Thank you.
I say on average, you're paying about 6 times 50, about $300 or more to line dance and use that facility than the other people that are using that facility a year.
So I would have to pay an instructor $100 a class
I don't
in
know
order
what
to.
you're paying, but I'm just saying, you need to look at that because if
Oh,
you're
absolutely.
not being fair, you're not fair.
Oh, I agree. Okay,
It's a la carte. You guys don't want a la carte, but that's a la carte.
you're absolutely right. That's one that I didn't agree with from the start. And what do you do at this point? Do I pay $100 an hour? What do I do? Do I stop letting them do it? You know, what do you do? So moving right along, Kahiti still has some openings over there for some classes. But next, again, this is just showing how maxed out we are with our classes, which is a big thing for us, is group fitness. Moving ahead. And this is an example of what we have in comparison with other facilities that are high dollar. Some charge twice as much as that. We have more offerings than any of them. Moving right ahead. This is what I'm suggesting that we do. We looked at this for last year, but during the pandemic, it wasn't a good plan. And that was taking a racquetball court and converting it. And we have spin classes that we offer. The next slide. This is what it will look like. That's your acoustic tile on the side and the bikes and sound system. And that's the upgraded. That's when you go to 45,000 and you can do all kinds of classes in there. That's a lot of square footage. And we have 2 courts and we have 2 people playing now. So it's time to use that facility for a lot of other things. We need the space and we don't have to build anything else to do that. Again, we looked at that last year, but with COVID, we weren't comfortable with moving forward with that. So we held off because we're being fiscally responsible. Now it's time. Okay, next. Those are just little kiddie kayaks I talked about, just down there for fun. That's what I'm talking about for kids to play in. Next. That's the back porch. I'm talking about a conversion of the back patio, and I want to get design instead of like, because what I envision, first of all, it's underutilized, just like the racquetball court. It's beautiful. It's a great setup. I feel like it's got something to do with ergonomics and where people come in. If that was on the front, everybody would hang out. Nobody uses it. No matter what we do, people don't use that back porch. And that's a facility that's a lot of square footage. So my vision, I'm not the expert in doing it, but my vision would be you take one half of it and you turn it into a mind-body exercise room with the most fantastic view of the whole village. And now we're talking about state-of-the-art. When people, oh my gosh, look what they've got. They got a resort setting where they're doing yoga and Pilates. How awesome is that? So we air condition the place, put some glass up there, and you put new flooring. And then half of it, in the middle of it, you keep a back porch. On the other half of it, you just extend the exercise room, which again is a very popular item. We extend and we get about another 12 to 1,500 square foot of usage for a low price. We just got to screen that, put that in. But I feel like it makes more sense to have a design done, have someone does recreation facilities and work with my recreation advisory committee and figure out what makes most sense. So that would be design this year and then build it next year. That's it.
Where's the long-range capital plan for that?
No, it's not.
That's it for me.
Yes, sir.
Y'all done? Thank you.
Why don't we take a few minute break and we'll start back with food service. All right, if we could please take our seats, we're going to get started again with food service. I will hand it over to Mitzi Lane.
Thank you, Kevin. Wow, thank you. Would you like to introduce me again? I have
Well, you know, they might not be clapping when you're done.
I know, I agree. Thank you all. I have Andy Fox with me as well. I'm going to go over some numbers. I'd like to thank Charlotte and Tyler and Kevin. For those of you that don't know, they have been here just tireless hours. They've been here all weekend. They were here Saturday. They were here Sunday. And so we all agree that this has been a challenging year for everybody coming off of a COVID year. So, as we get into these numbers, Tyler and I have actually still been looking at things. He's marking things on his paper over here as I'm marking things on my paper. So we still have a few changes and tweaks to make. So if you'll just bear with us as we go through the food service budget. We'll get right into TOQA. If you'll go, who's running slides? Kevin, is it you? Okay. We'll look at the TOQA. I think the main thing here, Marty, you asked for a comparison yesterday. You'll see there's the 2020, 2021, and 2022. Really not a huge change. There is obviously a decrease there in the operating supplies, but we kept the revenue the same. Andy does pay $2,000 a month rental fee at TOQA for us, and so we just left that in there for you to see. Some of the highlights at TOQA, you're going to see this as a consistent charge or expense. Yeah, there you go. In the food service operating and probably among all buildings, the facilities with the deep cleaning through Centos. Due to COVID, we increased that last year, and we kept that increase in there this year. We want to make sure our buildings are clean and the property owners are safe. The budgeted expense is down $25,000. There was the decrease there again, as we mentioned, in small tools, the computer services, and depreciation. So rolling on over into Tenacity, I guess the best thing for me to do would show you that maintenance, of course, year over year, we have decreased, but then the operating supplies has increased. The next slide would show you exactly the $15,000 in a hood for the Tenacity kitchen. Andy's got that in there. Again, you're going to see that deep cleaning. We wanted to keep that. You can go ahead to that next one.
Yes, ma'am.
Here we go. We've got the deep cleaning, and then, as I mentioned, the replacement hood for Tenacity kitchen.
Mitzi, it was pointed out, that replacement hood I'll move to capital, but
Okay,
the spend's still the same.
right. I think it may be on that capital sheet on the end. We'll look. When I get to capital, let's make sure it's on there.
Okay.
All right, Kahidi Clubhouse. You're going to notice here, of course, the contract labor versus last year's increased, as well as the revenues. That's one of the numbers that Tyler and I have discussed this morning, as well as with Andy. As we get on into the presentation, we're going to talk about a kitchen expansion at Kahidi. We feel like with that kitchen expansion, having the restaurant closed 1 month, maybe even longer, that budgeted revenue number is going to have to be decreased. That's a little high because this year, looking at what we're projected through year end, is about $415,000 to $420,000 in revenues, which is huge. Thank you to everybody who's been patronizing Kahidi, and just wanted to point that out. That is something that we're still looking at. Wonderful, wonderful. Next slide, let's look at the Kahidi Community Center. You're going to see an increase there versus 2021 in the utilities, and what we did last year was basically had to kind of guess what kind of a utility expense we were going to have, it being our first full year of the community center. So we took the actual numbers there. That's what that increase is for. And then I just made a little note on the depreciation. I'm going to get with Kevin on that and see if we're accurate there. But that's what you're going to see, the increases. Now we've had actual full year of numbers that we were able to put into the budget. Kahidi Community Center has been successful. We've used it for recreation classes. They use it for a lot of clubs, activities. So it's, really been a nice enhancement for the community over there. Now let's look at Kahidi highlights. Some of the things are the installation of the new motorized outdoor curtains. There's 3 additional ones being proposed. As you know, they're on one side of that portico, and if we can add 3 more on the other side, that would give us a fully enclosed room that we can use pretty much all year round because we can pull those down. The food and beverage sales, as we mentioned, has increased due to the exceeding current year budget through August. Again, we're going to go back and reevaluate that due to the potential closure of the restaurant during the expansion. Deep cleaning is in there, as I mentioned. We'll have the liquor license renewal, as we usually do. This is the part I wanted to mention, the placeholder that has been in the 10-year plan for our Kahidi expansion of $100,000. As we've got the design team looking at things, working on everything, it looks like within the next couple of weeks we would have a better number for you. We would like to actually propose to change that number now to $175,000. The grill has increased the revenue from 2017 of $195,000 up to $325,000 just this year alone, year to date. We currently, feed 150 people to 200 people. The kitchen's small. I'm going to show you some photos coming up in a moment of what the kitchen looks like. So again, we think that right now we need to change that and increase it to $175,000. If you'll go to the next slide, what I want to show you, this was Friday morning, so the restaurant wasn't busy. It was a Kahidi Food Service Committee that I attended, and I asked the gang to, let me take some photos. But this just shows you the gal on the left there. She is the line prep, they do salads there. They, prepare the hot plates. Right behind them in black, that's our chef, and that's how close they are all day long, that they have to just get up and down. And then in the back behind, you see the ice machine, the ladies walking forward. And if you want to go to the next slide, this is just the front of the house. Wanted to show you kind of there again when they're working on the beer taps, where the register is. And Andy and team have, kind of just moved things around and cleaned it out and given them more space as best they can. But this just shows you kind of how the layout is in the kitchen there.
May I?
I guess I didn't know if you wanted me to finish the Kahidi pictures or.
Yeah, go ahead. Finish the Kahidi
That might
picture.
be it,
Yeah,
Pat.
then it'll be
Yep,
mine.
you're good. Then we go to Yacht Club.
Okay, good. Yeah, I wanted to drop in before Yacht Club.
Okay.
And what I wanted to do is the people that are here from Kahidi, how many have lived here 2 years or less? Kahidi, 2 years or less. Yeah, okay. 2 years or less, yeah. Yeah. Some of us have lived here a long time and some of us have lived here forever. Well, you don't count. 2 years or less. So, I think it's important. Why are you asking me? Because I'm about to explain. I know. I know. Listen up by what I'm about to say. It's really important that the community, POA, Loudoun County, Monroe County, understands the history going into all of this budget process, because there's a lot of stuff in the background that relates to this. Now, I'm not saying, as Steve and I have a conversation before, I am not a proponent of do it the old way. I am for progressing and all this, but I wanted to point out something. A number of years ago, I think it was 2016, 2017, there was a great big controversy in Tellico Village regarding the Kahidi Community Center. I'm getting to your point. The community, POA, all of us, said, what is the value of putting in a community center in Kahidi when only, and I think the quote in the newspaper was 10% of the population lives down there? And the board, the community, took this under research, advisement, et cetera, and determined, with Bruce and a number of people were on that committee in here, took that and decided that the best thing to do for POA, Loudoun and Monroe, was to put that community center in, and there are a lot of reasons. One was you would go sit in the restaurant, sit out on the uncovered portico, and you would see visitors come down, and the husband would go, oh, look, nobody's playing golf here, because you didn't have many people living down there. And the second lady would say, and where do I do my quilting? And you would say, in the double wide, and then they would pack in their car and go look somewhere else. So we put this community center in here, hoping and praying that we were going to be right? That it would be a draw to POA to get more people to move here, particularly in Kahidi. And what has been the result, sir? A huge number of homes. it takes the lots that were non-assessment paying, it takes the people that have foreclosed and it's put houses on there. This community is, if you look at the ACC and you break it out by neighborhoods, it is the fastest growing neighborhood community that we have in Tellico Village and has been for the last few years, and we want to keep it that way. So as you're reading this, I want you to understand that this has a history behind it. And this is part of that ongoing building of the Kahidi community, which relates to Alice and I getting on a jet ski, driving down to Kahidi, having dinner, taking a nice leisurely stroll back to the dock, unless you want to find people, meet me and take me back in your car, and then we come back up here. So it is a viable part of this community, and this plays a major role, and I just wanted to update you on the history. Thank you.
Could you go back to the budget numbers for Kahidi? A couple of questions. And your other, not the community center, the restaurant, the 229, I'm assuming that has cost of goods sold for the food service?
Yes.
Okay, and then is there or is there not consulting fees to AWE in this budget? Because the question I got, if they're in there,
There is, but I don't know where.
I'd like to come up with a plan so there aren't any consulting fees next year at Kahidi.
We actually don't have those in the budget this year. I believe they were in there last year for.
So 2022 has got 0 for consulting fees. Well, you can verify, but
I was
that's
about
my
to say, let me verify,
recommendation. Unless you come back and say we absolutely have to have it, you ought to figure out a way so we don't need consulting at Kahidi. So we're pure 100% POA.
Okay.
Thanks.
So I'd like to talk about the capital for a minute for the restaurant expansion. And we haven't got the final numbers, but we do. I'm Tom McPhee, by the way, introduce myself. I lived in Kahidi since 2010. When they come in, we do expect they're going to be somewhere around 175,000. We only get one chance to do this. If we don't do it right, that facility will be compromised for the end because it'll never get redone. We know that. And what's the benefit of it? The benefit is the sales, as Mitzi pointed out, have gone from 2017 to we're going to be here in 2021. So over double sales in 4 years. That's incredible growth in any industry, especially the restaurant. It's been continual. What's driving that is a lot of large events. So the women's 18-holers had their opening lunch there. The women's 9-holers have their opening lunch there. The member guest has their Friday nights there. The HOA has a music event there next month. We have a music event there next month that's open to the village. We had a Roaring 20s party 2 days ago. So all of these events bring in more people than we can handle out of the kitchen. So we restrict them. So there is a payback for this going forward, and we really have to do this right one time. Otherwise, we'll be compromised for the history of the facility. You guys have done a great job, and the board included, in giving us a great facility with the community center, the portico, which was private funding, and the restaurant, which is now being utilized village-wide. So we really need to invest in it and make sure we get that number right. And when we do the kitchen expansion, it's not too small and not, cheapened up.
I'm not here to throw cold water on anything, but I just want to remind us that the process for this is to look at operations costs and look at investment later, because there's a lot of investments that we haven't considered in all these. So when we talk the investments of the motorized outdoor curtains and the kitchen expansion, keep in mind that those will be competing for dollars from other sources too. So we need to make sure that we have all the information on all the other investments that we're going to be doing as well. So not to say that we don't need these things, just to keep in mind that there's a lot of desires for those those monies that we have for investments. So just keep that in mind.
Hi, I'm Laura Haupt. I just moved to Kahidi 6 months ago. And the main draw to us was the clubhouse, was the activities, was the pub. We looked at the village, and it just wasn't quite the right fit. Then we just found Kahidi on our own. Our realtor didn't even take us there. We found it on our own, and as soon as we drove in, and we just saw how beautiful. And we stopped at the clubhouse, we had lunch. I saw the exercise room with the girls doing the Zumba, and I'm a dancer, so I'm like, that's me. My husband wanted the clubhouse. We have loved going to the grill, but I must say, the food, because we're eating the same thing over and over again, gets a little boring. If you expand that kitchen and allow some new food items, maybe some like grilled chicken or grilled fish and vegetables, I would be up there 5 nights a week because I don't cook, I like to eat. So please, please approve this kitchen expansion so we can just all love Kahidi even more and invite more of our friends to come. Thank you.
You can move on to the next if you would like, Kevin. We're going to go on into the yacht club. You'll notice here this going back to the comparison, 21 versus 2022. The big thing down towards the bottom on the right-hand side in the middle is account 7007. That's our management fee. So Andy had $10,000 for this year. We are proposing 0, so there would be 0 subsidy for the yacht club as far as the food service operation piece goes in 2022. The only piece that I'm questioning there again when Tyler and I were riding back and forth is the operating supplies. We're going to go back and look at that. I feel like that's a little high. But in the operating supplies, one thing that has been requested of us for a while is to repair this elevator. That is actually in there. Beth and I've talked, and we're going to have someone come in and actually repair the inside. So you'll see that coming up at the first of the year where they'll replace that wood. I think the highlights are on, oh, well, we've got Activity Center, I'm sorry. On the next page, you'll notice Revenue, Other. We're going to discuss that in detail shortly, but that is the online liquor and wine sales that we started last year as a 1-year trial period. I would like to talk about that. I think it's on, well, we'll go one more, highlights. The 5th floor renovations are included in capital. We've asked for 300 chairs for the great room. The kitchen level floor, we went in and have evaluated the tile, the plumbing, the drainage issues that needs immediate attention. That's one of the first things we'd like to do in 2022. And then as you notice there, Activity Center, the liquor license for the online liquor and wine sales, that's what I would like to discuss next. Last year I had came to you and proposed a 1-year trial. This is just to show you, we actually budgeted $1,000 a month for revenue. We didn't start this until June due to the timing of when we got the license, when we got all the paperwork, training for the different staff members here that have to oversee that. But you'll see there, you know, our big deal, what we said last year is if we could just break even, that's what we would like to do in order to basically show our appreciation to the legislators that passed this for us. And if you'll see there, our net income, we are positive. Of course, Andy and I talked about, you know, we really feel like it'll pick up more. It was one of those, over here shaking his head, Kevin, he uses it quite a bit.
Thanks.
Thanks, Mitzi.
No, but we did have actually, oh, I'm just giving him a hard time. We did have a couple of property owners, of course, due to COVID, that said that I've used it and this is why. Had another gentleman who had an injury on his leg and he said, I can drive there, but I really don't want to get out of the car. It worked out great. Amanda was able to bring his wine to him right there at the car. You know, one thing we may even look at, we have no intention of doing it at this time, but we actually have the capability of delivery if we wanted to offer that as a service to our property owners, delivery within the village. So that is something that I would like to continue on next year. So I've got that in there as a proposal.
Mitzi, what's the cost of the license?
Is it $2,000 or $1,800? I'll have to tell you for sure, Steve. It's 2,000 or less for my license. It's just like a typical liquor license would be. We had to pay, it was like $100 for Amanda to have a training, and then I had to pay like $150 one-time training. But then, you know, you have to renew it every year. So if you look at the food service division summary, the other revenue there, we've talked about that, the $12,000 for the online liquor, and then the $24,000 for TOQA rent. That's how we came up with the $36,000 there. But you know, looking at it overall, looks like the grand total, we're looking at a loss of $815,000 for the entire food service division, versus last year we had a budget of $858,000. But as I mentioned before, there are a couple of things in those operating supplies I want to go back and look at with Tyler and just make sure that those are accurate, as well as the depreciation for the building there at Kahidi. The next slide there, Kevin, if you want to highlight anything on there, I can't see it. I even have my paper.
No, that's just the detail line items there. And like
Okay.
Mitzi said, we'll follow up on a few of the bigger categories.
Now, the last slide I have here for you is the capital. You've got what we mentioned. Everything should have already been mentioned, so none of this is the surprise. The one exception would be the Kahidi expansion placeholder. I would like to propose that we make that $175,000, so that would actually bring our total up to $376,000 for our capital for the entire food service division. Now, I know Bruce said we had to compete for this, but yesterday Clayton asked for 1.1 million, so keep that in mind.
Limited resources, lots of competition.
That's right, I know. But I appreciate the opportunity to prepare this, and like I said, I've got Andy if you all have specific food service questions for him, and then of course Kevin, Tyler, and Charlotte can help as well.
I do have a question for you. Have we considered going back to TOQA and the fact that we are constantly looking for meeting room and use of space efficiently? Have you considered motorized curtains for the pavilion? Just saying.
Good idea.
Any other questions for food service? All right, well, that concludes today. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., we're going to cover marketing, admin, as well as the consolidated financials for the whole POA.
You're going to have long-range capital plan consolidated.
Yes. Yep.
You're gonna have cash flows tomorrow too?
I'm gonna try to get my balance sheet done tonight, Steve. You know from Parker what a challenge that was in that model. Yep. All right, thank you.